Hey everyone, welcome to This Week I'm Into podcast. This week we're discussing board games. I'm Pete Tyler. Later on, we'll be having my friend from Northwestern Physical Therapy School, Jenna Preslicka, join us to talk about her passion with board games. And currently I'm with my friend and co-host, Paul Imbrugulio. Paul, how are you doing?
I'm anything but bored, Hans.
I don't get why they're called board games. They should be called engaged games. Huh? What do you think about that?
Well, I'll be honest, I was trying to, so when I looked up the opposite of bored for that gag, the only answer Google gave me was the word bore, B-O-R-E.
Like as in to bore a hole in like a piece of wood or
I think it
something?
just means to bore somebody, like,
Oh, that makes more sense.
but I don't know why, because I was like looking at the word like engaged or like attentive or like enthusiastic, but I don't know, none of them really came up.
Okay, well...
So I'm anything but bored. Ha 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 ha.
You're always bringing the excitement to the podcast, Paul, and that's what I appreciate.
I'd like to say that's what I'm known for.
Do you want to just hop right into it? Like, what is your experience with board games?
I would say it's mostly with like, I'm going to call your standards, Monopoly, Clue, Sorry, that kind of stuff. In an earlier episode we recorded, I do a lot of stuff that are like puzzle games that I would say technically probably fall under the board game category. But I don't think I've really gotten that deep into like the Catan starter pack and beyond.
Okay.
And we can get into why later, but
Catan's kind of like the gateway drug of board games, I would say.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
If you're a listener and that makes no sense to you, do not worry. We will get into that in a little bit.
Yeah, you will get it by the end of this.
I would say, I'll ask you, Paul, when was the last time you played a board game?
Probably a couple weeks ago, and it was Catan, funny enough. I have probably tried playing it 3 or 4 times now, and it, just for whatever reason, that's probably the most recent one I played. Okay. I lost, in case anyone was wondering.
And what is your current favorite board game?
The one that I think of, Hans, that I wish I could play again was, we went to like that board game cafe when I was there with you, and we played one, I don't know what it was called, but we played one where you were basically herbivore or a carnivore.
I think it was called Evolution, or does that sound right?
Yeah,
I think
that sounds Evolution. Right. And you could add like cool little modifiers to your either like herbivore or your carnivore, and then it was kind of PvE, kind of PvP, and all the graphics were very cute and the ideas were very fun. Yeah. So I thought that was fun.
I would say I'll give a shout out to that place. It's called Bonus Round in Chicago. Really fun board game cafe place. Like all it is you reserve a table and they have a million board games surrounding the entire place, and you can get a beer, get a coffee, whatever you want. We were there in the evening, so we opted for beers. And then the like board game experts, the people who run the place, they're like very familiar with all the board games, so you can choose a random board game. And I think they totally get rid of the barrier of the first time playing a board game.
Yeah.
Where it's like no one knows how to play. So we just have to spend, however long it is, maybe an hour, maybe more, to just play once so we all know how to play. Even though like that could just take up your time, and that's a problem with a new board game, but they get rid of it because they have these experts that are very familiar with all the games, and they just run through the entire instructions with you before you begin, and then they're there to answer your questions. So I love that place. I just wanted to give them a shout out because you brought it up. Yeah,
I think it's great, and I think the concept of them are great as well.
Yeah,
because like to your point, maybe you have like 10 different ones at home, but if you want to go try something, like it's a good opportunity. What about you? What do you got favorite, at least in your current thoughts?
Yes. Okay. My favorite far and away board game ever is called Betrayal at House on the Hill. If you're not familiar with Betrayal at House on the Hill, or just Betrayal for short, it's such a fun game in the way it's set up. So there's kind of 2 parts to it. The first part is you're kind of gang of explorers, kind of like Scooby-Doo style, where you are in this haunted mansion and you're all together on a team. So let's say there's 4 of you playing. And so in the first half of the game, you're all together on a team and you're exploring this haunted mansion, and you're like going upstairs or into the basement, into the attic, and then as you go to these places, you flip over tiles and you discover things. You discover like weapons or perks that will help you later on in the game. And then at one point, at the halfway mark of the game, there's something happens called the haunt. And when the haunt starts, it becomes this kind of asymmetrical board game where usually one of the four of the explorers, or however many there are, but I'm in this example I'm using four. One of the four explorers will become the villain, and the other three are now working on a team against the villain. And the thing that makes this game so interesting is like based on how the first half of the game went, you go into a manual and there's like 50 different scenarios for how the haunt goes. So effectively, every time you play it, it's a new kind of game. So if that doesn't make sense, it's like when the haunt happens, like it could be like a free for all, like everyone is against everyone, or it could be like a vampire style game where it's like the villain's trying to, suck the blood of all the survivors and the survivors have to escape. Or it's like a ghost style game and the ghost is trying to like chase all the survivors out of the haunted mansion. It just changes every single time. And that's why I love it, is because it's always new and it's always unique. So I'll give a shout out to Betrayal at House on the Hill. That is a really fun one. Other ones I've enjoyed, Paul, I'm a huge geography nerd. There's one
you can tell based off a lot of your fun facts.
Yeah, exactly. I played this last Friday. It's called Trekking the World. You're just a little traveler and you're trying to visit as many tourist locations as you can. And when you collect little tokens at these tourist locations, they have a card with them, and it has like a paragraph that you read that, like, I mean, you don't have to read it, but of course we're going to read it to the table of like just explaining what the location is and where it is, the cultural significance behind it. So I love Trekking the World. That's a really wholesome one.
Dude, I bet you learned some things about like national wonders or like tourist destinations. I remember learning a lot about that from Civ 5 when I used to play that game.
For anyone who's not familiar, Civ 5 is a video game about world domination. So
but you also dominate world wonders, so you can learn about them. And you also learn about famous artists and writers and things like that. So educational and violent.
Paul, do you want to explain what a board game is if someone was unfamiliar?
Nope. I don't know where to start.
I know. Actually, that's actually way more of a loaded question than it seems on the surface. Yeah.
Instead of explaining it, I think what we can say is that there's just so many different varieties. I mean, even in just the like 3 or 4 that we've mentioned in the last 10 minutes, I mean, there's just too many to talk about. So in that sense, I think everybody knows the basics ones that I was kind of talking about earlier, but there's also the crazy variety and complexity that Hans was talking about with Betrayal and the House on the Hill.
Right.
And then there's entire other versions, which, if you want to say like card games are probably in the same genre, there's things like Apples to Apples or other versions of like social kind of board games.
Mm-hmm.
So just it's too many to cover.
Too many. Yeah. I mean, board games is a ginormous industry. In fact, like we could probably break this episode into several smaller episodes about subgenres of board games, which we kind of effectively did when we talked about role-playing games, aka Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, but you could go even more segmented than that. Like Paul was talking, like social deduction games with like One Night Werewolf, or like dice games, with Yahtzee. You're all over the place, right? And effectively, you're playing with your friends, combination of chance, luck, and skill. Well, yeah, I would say pretty much everyone's probably familiar with board games. Hey, and also, wait, not to mention we talk about chess. That's the most famous board game, arguably.
Oh, God. Okay, so we've done a lot of board game episodes.
Yeah. But this is, we're talking on a broader scale here for sure.
Yeah.
I love board games, just real quick. I mean, I talked about my favorites, but just they're like very creative. To me, they're escapist, like especially when you get a little deeper into the board game worlds than, maybe Monopoly or Risk, which is ones that maybe people have heard of a lot. But there's ones where like I mean, I already talked about Betrayal, where you're, navigating a haunted house, but there's like terraforming Mars, where you're like a space corporation trying to change Mars in your favor. There's like Pandemic, which I mean, maybe that's a little on the nose these days, but you're
No, we're past that,
effectively
right?
you're on a science team and you're trying to, stop a world pandemic. I will say, because I looked it up just to make sure, but that board game came out in 2008. So that was
Oh yeah,
way
yeah. It's
before,
well before.
way before the actual pandemic. But yeah, I just like them. They're escapist. Like they're kind of imaginary, and then they also scratch that competitive itch for me. So I would definitely say I very much enjoy board games.
Hans, have you ever tried making a board game before?
No, I don't think I ever have.
I'm not going to come out with some crazy thing like I have had before, but I just remember we had a task in elementary school where like the class activity for the day was basically to like create your own board game. So everybody got like a big piece of poster paper and you would break out into groups and like come up with a board game. And I think everybody kind of did a very tile progression based one, kind of like Life, like the game of Life, where, like you'd have different actions on every tile, and maybe it was like, oh, go back 3 squares, or, know, draw a card, right? So, whatever, like elementary schoolers were coming up with this. But it was really fun. I was thinking about it this week, and I just remember how much of a blast I had creating those. But then I was also thinking about the complexity of even just such a simple game.
Yeah.
And how, you're talking about there being like luck and chance and whatever else are factors in building a game. But just the thought that you'd have to, or like the balancing of it all and the amount of iterations you probably have to go through for every like play test that you do as you're developing it. The final product probably comes out very different from like the conceptual design that you probably started with.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's actually so much that goes into it. And also, I think that's an amazing like elementary school activity, because it requires tons of creativity to actually make a board game. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then we played everybody else's. So then you would like go around and everyone got to play everybody else's game. So you got to like teach other people how to play. Okay. You had to write rules.
What was the best one?
I don't know if I recall.
Yeah,
it probably wasn't mine. But
dang, no blue ribbon for you.
Yeah, I actually created Catan. I don't know if I told you that. It was at the 3rd grade.
I'm impressed. One of my fun facts here is that Settlers of Catan was released in 1995. So
1995.
Sorry, Paul, were you in 3rd grade in 1995?
Almost.
No comment.
No comment.
Yeah, we can actually maybe talk about that now. Okay, so we talked about it earlier. We called Catan a gateway drug, or it's a gateway game. By that, I just mean probably a lot of people have heard of the board games like Monopoly, Yahtzee, Risk, Life. I would call those. I'm not commenting on the quality of those games. Those are all very fun games to play. And obviously they're fun because they're very popular. But I would say those are like fairly accessible, fairly like beginner board games, right? They're not incredibly complicated rules. They're easy to jump into. With the exception of Risk, maybe that takes like forever. But it is like on its surface, it's actually not that complicated to play Risk. It just takes a long time, right? Would you agree with that, Paul?
Yep.
And then you kind of start shifting into board games that are maybe a little more strategy oriented, a little more rules based, a little more like thinking. I don't know if that's exactly fair. Not to say that those board games I mentioned don't have thinking, but you get just a little more involved, and you get this kind of like beginner mid, which is like, I don't know, like One Night Werewolf. I would call that kind of like a mafia game where one person is the werewolf and everyone else is like villagers or detectives, and the werewolf is trying to disguise themselves as a villager, and you have to like vote out the werewolf before they kill all the villagers. And then you get to this kind of like mid-tier of game, which is, I would call Catan. So Settlers of Catan, if you're not familiar, is like a resource trading game where you build outposts, and based on dice rolls, you get different resources. and you trade those resources with other players for whatever resources they have, so you can start building more outposts and you can build roads leading to better resources and things like that. And it's just slightly more involved. There's a lot of strategy into it. In fact, there actually is a world championship for Catan, and I just call it a gateway game because it is a little more involved, but basically it's kind of a step up from like Monopoly, I would say. And once you start getting into Catan, you're kind of getting into a little more niche types of board games. Once you start getting into those niche types of board games, you realize there's an entire world of board games out there that are way more intense and like way more in the weeds, way more rules, way more strategy and thinking than those kind of games that we're all familiar with, like Monopoly. So that's why I was calling Catan like a gateway game. I mean, and then you can get into really complicated games like Terraforming Mars and Wingspan and Betrayal at House on the Hill. So yeah, that's just my pitch for what a gateway game
gateway drug is.
Would you say that's fair, Paul? Would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I would. It just kind of depends on the kind of genre of games that you like. Because kind of as you were describing it, I'm thinking of why Catan's, to be honest, not really one of my favorites. And I think there's like certain aspects of board games that I'm like, I like, and certain aspects of certain games, right, that I tend to stray away from because I know that they're not like my thing. So I think in the sense of like gateway, right, I feel like a lot of people like kind of working together and kind of competing aspect of Catan. And it's kind of similar how that game Evolution we played was very similar. Like, so there's some aspects of the games where the team, not the team, but like the players were kind of cooperating on adding resources to a pool that we could all take from. And then there was also aspects of the game where like you had to be strategic with like how many you would try to take out of the center because you might, screw over the person who's later and then they'd get mad and they'd start, retaliating.
Yeah.
But I'm not totally sure. And I mean, maybe Jenna will illuminate, but I'm not totally sure that the Wingspan, which is, I would say like a second game in from your gateway of Catan, is like that much different, other than the fact that it's just less well known.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of like there's kind of a time investment to it. I'm trying to walk a delicate line here because I'm not saying that those like games that I call beginner games are bad games at all. Like I don't want it to come across like that. Like those are very enjoyable games. It's just I would call the other games like more involved. Like a game of Wingspan and a lot of the games I mentioned are at least an hour long and like probably more than an hour long. So it's kind of a time investment thing too. And like it's just like you have to commit to learning different rules. But like it's hard. They're just like you said, they're not as familiar to people. But if you spent the time that you learned Monopoly then on Wingspan, then you would know Wingspan. It's just not as well known.
Yeah. The other thing with board games is they've definitely gotten more expensive, right? So the ones that you were talking about, Wingspan, I would guess is probably like a $60 game. And I don't really know what the retail price of some of those big company games are, like Monopoly. I mean, yeah, I'm curious what kind of factors go into that, because it's definitely more than just miniatures and like how many cards or pieces that go into it. I wonder if there's just more to it, because sometimes you're looking at the shelf right at the store or like the the board game store, and you're just like, I don't know, I'm not used to like investing like $60 in a board game, so I always am like looking to understand like what
makes it $60.
Yeah, like what makes it $60, right?
Yeah.
Or other amounts. I mean, like, I is it like how long you're expecting to play this, right? Like, what's its like replayability? What's its how many like little pieces are involved, right? Because like House on the Hill, right, has a huge manual, right? It probably took a long time to create that game.
Yeah, I'm sure that factors into it. Yeah, but I mean, also, right? There's a million board games, and we're talking, if we're just going to economics here, like you have to be competitive. So there's like something to be said about labor cost, about resource costs. So.
I assume when you're pricing these, you're thinking about, what kind of tier you want to be in, right? I imagine that, if you're at a store and you're looking at a $20 game, you're expecting a little less than a game that is worth $60, right? I kind of expect a lot. Yeah. I mean, I'm, of anything, right? I mostly am thinking about video games, but like I expect a lot out of a $60 game, right? Either whether it be quality, replayability, story, whatever it is, whatever it's, I'm expecting out of it. I'm expecting a good product.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. Can I jump into some fun facts?
I be ready for Hans's fun facts. Hans's fun facts. Hans's fun facts. Do 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 do.
Fun facts with Hans and Hans's fun facts and Hans's fun facts. Fun facts with Hans. Yeah. Okay. Jenga is a Swahili verb roughly translating to build.
Did you know that Mungu in Swahili means God?
Thank you, Paul.
I didn't know that, Hans.
Isn't that ironic that when we play Jenga and the tower tips over, we say, to build? Maybe it's saying, like, another round. Like, let's build again.
I don't think I yelled Jenga when the thing falls. I think
you don't yell Jenga? That's the whole thing. I think I yell,
I just yell, haha, you knocked it over.
You have to yell Jenga. Okay.
I've been playing that game wrong.
Some of the oldest known board games date back over 5,000 years ago. The royal game of and Senet,
chess,
an ancient Egyptian game, are among the earliest examples of board gaming.
I don't know what is.
Me neither, to be honest.
This is a shallow fact. That was a so shallow fact.
Yeah, you called me out and I paid the price. or maybe we go play record it, release it on the YouTube.
No.
Are you looking up right now? I see their fingers typing.
Yeah. Wait, this looks really complicated. This must be different. No, I don't know. This looks kind of complicated. It's a cool board shape though.
Okay.
The royal game of Wait, I sent you a link we can play.
All right, we'll play
Hey, Paul here with a quick side note. Hans and I did play and I did beat him.
Okay. Snakes and Ladders is an adaptation of an ancient Indian game that is designed to teach about karma. Are you familiar with karma, Paul?
Wait. The game is?
No, Snakes and Ladders. We're on to the next fun fact, okay?
Oh.
Try to keep up.
Wait, is it Shoots and Ladders?
I think Shoots and Ladders is a version of Snakes and Ladders, but I think Snakes and Ladders was the OG. I might be wrong about that. Maybe that's a fun fact.
Yeah, it probably is.
Snakes and Ladders, there's your fun fact. Snakes and Ladders is a game. Okay, the Monopoly Man is roughly based off of the
Pringles guy. Oh.
J.P. Morgan. He does kind of look like the Pringles guy, though. You're right about that. Wait, that's the Mandela effect thing, right? Because I like the Pringles guy does not have a monocle.
Well, he also doesn't have a body.
Oh, fair enough.
I just think they look kind of similar. They're just white men with mustaches.
Yeah, they're all the same, right?
They actually don't look similar at all.
All right. Speaking about Monopoly was originally designed in 1904 by Elizabeth Maggie as the landlord's game to highlight the negative aspects of concentrating land in private monopolies. So ultimately, in the beginning,
it's anti-capitalism.
Yeah, Monopoly's anti-capitalism, but today it's kind of celebratory in a way. Like you win if you get the Monopoly, right? Like,
yeah, she's sending the wrong message.
Yeah, I think that's kind of ironic.
That's okay.
Clue, known as Cluedo in the UK, was invented during World War II as a way for families to pass time in bomb shelters.
That's sad. I really liked the Clue movie. I thought that was really creative.
I never saw the Clue movie. What was that, Gal Gadot?
Oh, I don't know.
Wonder Woman?
Well, I know who Gal Gadot is.
Okay, never mind.
But no, it was cool. I mean, I don't want to spoil it for you, but the ending was like fun. Like they kind of like made it kind of like the game.
Colonel Mustard with the hammer.
I was always Colonel Mustard.
I couldn't name another Clue character. Oh, Miss Peacock. I can name 2 Clue characters.
They're all colors. There's like Mrs. White and Scarlet.
Oh.
I mean, I don't know all their names, but
okay, I don't know either. That's all my fun facts.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Peacock.
No problem. I do want to give a shout out to a couple resources. If you're into board games or you want to be into board games, there is a YouTube channel called Shut Up and Sit Down. and they do board game reviews.
Don't tell me what to do.
Paul, shut up and sit down. Listen to this, all right? Shut up and sit down is a great YouTube channel. They do board game reviews. They're a lot of fun. They're a pretty funny channel. And then, like I mentioned, there's like a million board games out there. So it's kind of fun, even if you have no intention of playing or buying this board game, to just like see other people play it and review it. Like, honestly, it's kind of fun. Like, they're very creative oftentimes. So I'll give it a shout out to them. And then another YouTube channel called Watch It Played. If you ever need a walkthrough of how to play a board game, I guarantee Watch It Played has made a video for you. They have made they have taught the instructions to every single board game there is out there. I swear to God, like there's no miss there. So shout out to Rodney Smith from Watch It Played. And then I just want to give a shout out to my local game shop, All About Games in Boise. They're an awesome game shop. So I bought many games from them. They're awesome. So I'll give a shout out to them. Awesome. Okay, Paul, is there anything else you would add?
One thing that I thought was kind of fun one time, I don't know, this was kind of out of the ordinary for me. Maybe it's not weird, but I thought it was unique. I wanted to go to one of those board game cafes with one of my buddies in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
So we go, and whatever, he'd convinced himself he was going to buy this game. So he bought it, then realized that they didn't have anywhere else for us to play it because it was kind of full.
Okay.
So I found an ice cream store down the street, and we bought ice cream, and we played a board game in this ice cream store. And it was really nice.
That's extremely wholesome.
Yeah.
All right. I got a
Just
couple
good
questions
vibes.
for you.
Okay.
What board game was it?
I think the game was called Root. Yeah, it's called Root, a game of woodland might and right.
Okay, sounds very cute.
It was very cute. There's 4 factions, of 4 different animals. They all have different powers, and you're trying to, I think, take over the forest.
Okay. And then my follow-up question, what flavor of ice cream did you get?
I only get peanut butter chocolate ice cream. So I know, without actually remembering, I know that's what I got.
Wow, that sounds like a very cute, wholesome day, Paul.
I know. I recommend doing that, finding a location to play a board game in.
Thanks for sharing, Paul. We have Jenna Preslicka joining us after the break. Welcome back to the This Week I'm Into podcast. Joining us now, we have Jenna Preslicka, who is both my friend and classmate from Northwestern Physical Therapy School. Jenna, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Great. It's great to have you on the podcast. Thanks so much for coming on.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so happy you're here. Just to start, could you give us a little background about yourself?
Oh, yes, of course. I obviously am in PT school with Pete. I call you Pete. And I am originally from Minnesota. I come from a pretty big family, which I feel like is relevant for this podcast. I have 4 younger siblings. Originally from Minnesota, then I went to school in St. Louis and then lived there for a while. And now I'm here in Chicago.
Great. Thanks, Jenna.
Mm-hmm.
And then can you just explain a little bit about, obviously you're here to talk about board games.
Yes.
So what is your experience with board games and how did you first get into it?
So a big part of this goes back to my family because this is our thing that we do together. Because I have a big family and then there's 3 people that have married in now. So we have, like, when we're all together, there's just a lot of us and we just play a lot of board games together. And I feel like we've always kind of played a lot of games. Like I used to play a lot with my cousins. But since me and some of my siblings kind of live outside of Minnesota now, it's kind of become a tradition that whenever we're all in town, my dad usually buys a new board game and then we'll learn it and then play it together. So, I mean, we have a whole closet of games at home. And yeah, so it's just something we do together as a family. I also have done like board game nights with like friends, like in St. Louis, and then here not as much being in grad school. And then Mitchell and I will play some, like the 2 of us. But I feel like a lot of my experience with it is playing with my like big family at home. So yeah, I will credit this hobby to a lot to like my dad because he does a lot of the research behind what games we should play. And then my brother Evan is always the person that we make read the instructions and teach us. So I can just sit there and learn it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's such a tough job. I love the idea of the board game closet. It just like bashed a new memory into my head where I had a friend also who like loves board games. Actually, Hans, he's the same guy that we played Roost in that ice cream shop with.
Oh, okay.
So same guy. But his family also had a board game closet. And I just remember every single time we went over his house, they would say like, all right, Paul, like pick a new game from the closet that you haven't played before.
Okay, yeah, I love that.
That's how you know you've made it as a board game family, is if you open there's a closet specifically designated for board games.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's full. Like, it's packed. Because my dad buys new ones all the time. But it's also funny because, so my husband coming in, he like always jokes, he's like, I feel like I get good at a game and then we never play it again because you're always buying new games. So my dad kind of like makes fun of my husband Mitchell because he'll be like, sorry, Mitchell, I got a new game that you have to learn.
That's great. What are like a handful of the games you have been playing?
Okay, well, I feel like we go in waves as a family. Like, we'll kind of get into something and then want to play that more. But I definitely think it started, like, I feel like our kind of obsession with, like, these more intense games started with Resistance. It's like a hidden identity game. It's, like, it's very fun. There's very little to do. I think like the game quotes you probably like 30 to 40 minutes maybe, but it takes my family like 2 hours because you can just argue forever. So yeah, that's like, I feel like a common theme with our family because we're very, very competitive. So yeah, Resistance is like a big one that I think we kind of got into. We used to play that a lot. We haven't played it in a while. We definitely like traumatized my sister-in-law one time playing that. And then I think we kind of have taken a step back.
When tears start flying, it's like, all right, this got a little too out of hand.
Yeah. So that one's like a big one for our family. Catan, I feel like, is always a classic that, you know, one to go back to. It's just hard too because when we're playing, like, so I have 4 siblings and then my dad. My mom doesn't like to play board games a ton, which is kind of funny. So she'll just hang out. So there's like, with the 5 of us and my dad, that's already 6. And then if we bring in like in-laws, that's 8 or that's 9. So we play a lot of games that have either a lot of people when we're together. So that kind of will limit us sometimes, whereas like Catan is only up to 6. That's another one. Recently, my family's been into Cubitos, which is like a dice rolling game, which is really fun. There's these games we also really like that I looked up the name of the company. Let's see if I can find it. I think it was Facade Games. They like all come in like a little book that's like this. Like the box is like a book and then you open it up. So they're smaller games, which is nice. Yeah, it's Facade Games. So we have like Tortuga, Deadwood, and Bristol from that company. So we really like those games. They're really fun. It's like kind of a combo of some skill and like there's kind of like a hidden identity like component where you're like hiding what cards you have and stuff, but also then just some luck. So I feel like those are kind of like big ones we play, but we play a lot.
I'm sensing a little bit of a theme here with the hidden identity.
It's exactly
games
what I was thinking.
Into arguing. Yeah.
Absolutely. We have like literally controversies in our family of games that like we can't talk about because we'll just like argue.
Are those social deduction or whatever we calling them games, are those the ones that you play with like the 9 people?
Yes, some of them. So Deadwood, which is one of these Facade games, is a really fun one that we've been playing a lot lately when we're together. And that I think you can have up to 10 people. Something usually we all can play if we want to. Resistance, I don't remember how many people. I think we can usually play with everyone. We've played with big groups of that. It's just games like that get more complicated and longer with more people because you just have more people saying their opinions. But yeah, a lot of those, like my dad's really good about buying games now that we can play with a lot more people just because usually we have a lot of people.
Has your dad ever said how he does his research to find these new games?
And
this is like, I love talking about board games because a lot of the games you just mentioned, I've actually never heard of before. So now I want to go check them out.
Okay, great. I literally was telling Mitchell this morning, my husband, I was like, if I get nothing out of today, I want to say something Hans doesn't know, or Pete. I don't know why I called you Hans. Because I feel like you know a lot of the games. But so Games by James, have you guys heard of that store? I don't know if it might be local to Minnesota. There were a couple, but the one closer to us closed. And so now there's one in like the Mall of America in Minnesota, which my parents live in Minnesota. And so it's like maybe like a 20-minute drive. So my dad doesn't go there as often, but basically everyone that works there has played all the games. So my dad will just go in there and like ask the people like, what's the newest fun game that people are talking about that can have this many people, and just kind of, and he'll say like, we like games like this. And the people that work there will just kind of like give their opinions. I've always told my dad, like when he retires, he should like work there because he would be really good at it.
I feel like the board game community is just like so welcoming in general. Like we all love board games, you know, we're a little nerdy for board games. So if someone's coming in and asking like, what should I play? I bet like people are happy to help and pretty excited about it too.
Yes. Yeah. And there's a whole wide array because there's some games like at Games by James that like are, I feel like a little bit more of like an intense following. And I feel like we don't play games like that. I don't know if this falls in it. Two of my brothers play, is it Magic? The Dragon.
Magic the Gathering, the card game.
Yes. They play that. But like as a family, I feel like we don't play games like that are a little bit more like you play on the regular and it's like kind of like a thing you collect. But it's like at those stores, I feel like you can have like that intensity and also just like, you know, really chill games that are kind of more like party games or whatever.
Yeah, 100%. Jenna, I also wanted to ask you, I mean, you and your family have a very unique connection to board games. And me and Paul were talking a little bit about the kind of design and creation process of board games, but you have a very specific connection to that. So could you just illuminate a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm assuming you're talking about my parents actually make board games now.
Yes, that is what I wanted to hear about. Yeah. Yeah.
So my dad is an artist by trade. He does a lot of different things. And he is just a really creative person. And so he's gotten into game creation and design. So he just kind of comes up with these ideas and will try and, you know, come up with the gameplay. And then also my dad like has a couple 3D printers. So he'll like 3D print like the game pieces and everything. And then my parents have gotten into like going to game fairs and basically selling these games. And so they've had a couple that you've been able to buy before, and then it kind of transitions, you know, in and out of like when and where you can purchase these. And then right now they have a couple games that are in production. You might be able to buy, like one of them I think might be, you can buy wholesale right now. Like, so like stores could buy it, but I don't know if it's available for people to buy yet. But they basically have two coming to like market right now. But yeah, it's kind of cool because my dad knows a lot of like games that like do really well. And I feel like he aims more towards younger like population and a little bit more kind of like the fun kind of weird stuff. It's less like the really strategic games that my family gets into. So it's kind of like a different like population he's usually attracting with what he does. But yeah, it's like been really cool to kind of like see through them how the process goes of like game production. And then through this, my dad has also made connections with game companies then to be able to, like he's done a couple designs of games that were like created by other people. So yeah, it's a cool thing that they've kind of seen like the back end of it now and are hoping to like be successful with it. So yeah.
That's super cool. Did he just start doing that because you guys played board games a bunch, or do you guys play a lot of board games because he wanted to make them?
No, I think he started because we just play board games so much and he just really enjoys it. And they've been doing this now for, I don't know, a handful of years, probably 5+ that they've been kind of like working into this market. And yeah, we've been, I feel like, into intense board games a lot longer than that. So I think it kind of came from just this idea that we really enjoy them. And my dad, as an artist, really appreciates the games that are like, the design is done really well too. So like the pretty games, you know, that it's like, wow, this is just like beautifully done. So he kind of like appreciates that side too, as well as like the gameplay side.
Both the gameplay side and the art side, I'm sure. The actual aesthetics of the game.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I have a couple questions for you, Jenna. First, are you like allowed to give a shout out to one of those games hitting the market? Like, can we hear what it actually is about?
Yeah, their game company is HG Gameworks. So they have two that are in production right now. I know one of them is paused because there were maybe some like the production of it was slowed, but one is called Stink Bug, which they actually were selling through another company, and now they're selling it through this company. It's like for kids, it's kind of like a matching game. And then the other one is called Intergalactic Plumber. And
I like that.
Love that.
Yeah, I have not played that one, to be honest. I've seen all the pieces and everything, so I don't know like the full. I know there's these little guys that are like astronauts and their arms are up and then they're holding a plumber and you use it to like pick up, I think, meteors, but I don't know the whole gameplay. So those are the two games right now that will be able to be bought soon. I don't know like the specific timeline.
So are those the first two that they're going to release, or they've released ones previously?
They have, yeah. They've released other games, but the ones that they have released are, I don't know if you can buy any of them still, because the games will kind of go in and out of like production depending on how well they're doing or if the game company is kind of shifting what their focus is. So they've had a couple before. One that you could buy at Target for a long time that was called Hot Words, which is more of like a party game kind of that you would do with a big group. Then you could buy Stink Bug before through a different company. And I'm trying to think of, they had one called Alien Acrobats. That's the game that my dad, that kind of started this. Actually, yeah, the origin story. So my dad, we used to, as a family, we used to, for Christmas, you had to make everyone a present. So like physically. So we would, get creative. And my dad had made a game for my brother that he called Alien Acrobats. It is like a balancing game kind of on this tree, balance these aliens. So that was the game that kind of inspired all this. He probably made that game like 15 years ago and he just made it out of wood. So since like that kind of inspired this one. So you were able to buy a version of Alien Acrobats for a while. It had like a different name and they kind of put their different spin on that, but that one's not able to be bought anymore. But that was the one that kind of started it, was what my dad called Alien Acrobats.
And that's such a good tradition, first of all. Like, you make the presents for your family. That's so cool. And then that's so like creative. And the fact that he made that as a present for your brother and then was like, wait, this is legitimate. Like, we could like publish this. That's really interesting. Yeah. Do you have any kind of interest in the design process yourself? Have you ever thought about making a board game?
I made a board game in second grade for a school project.
I did too.
Nice.
Oh my God. I was telling Hans about this. This must be a thing.
Yeah, that's funny. I feel like that was the last time I made a board game. I really love playing them. I don't know if my creativity goes into that realm of like coming up with the ideas. So, no, I don't think so. I really just appreciate like playing them and seeing what other people come up with, and seeing my like dad's creativity through it is really cool too. But I don't personally have any interest in that. I like to just play them.
That's totally fair. I just thought I would ask.
Have you participated in his play testing? Like, are you the sample players for all of his ideas?
So I have lived away from home through a lot of this process when they've been doing this. So unfortunately, I do not get to be a part of that process usually. But my younger cousins are often in their like videos of gameplay that they show to like other companies when they're trying to like sell the game. So I'm just not home enough to do that, unfortunately. But they do have my cousins play the game and videotape them and like make a little video.
Jenna, I'm curious, is there any kind of remarkable or memorable story from playing board games throughout the years? Anything stick out to you?
Oh,
well, it
yes.
sounds like there's a couple she's not
Many.
supposed to tell us from her family too. So
Yes,
if you wanna dig
I
deep-
will.
Also sounds right.
I will share though. There is one that like still cracks me up to say. So my brother Noel is kind of like the one that you like. He's just a wild card. He's just gonna mess up your gameplay, and also he's just kind of a goofy guy. So my brother Evan calls it the Noel rule now, which is basically the rule is if you are able to win a game, you have to. Which, like, I don't know really how many games that's relevant to, and usually you want to win. But so we were playing Resistance, and so in Resistance you're on either the Resistance side, which is like the good guys, or the spies, which are the bad guys, and no one knows what you are, but the spies know who each other are, and there's like missions. So if you get on the mission, you can either give like the mission either succeeds or it fails. And so if you're Resistance, you want the missions to succeed. And if you're a spy, you can either have it succeed or fail. So you can be trying to pretend that you're Resistance to get people's trust and make it succeed, or you can fail it. But whether you succeeded or fail is all like anonymous. So no one knows if someone failed the mission, no one knows who failed the mission. So you're trying to work through these missions and if you're the Resistance, you want them all to succeed as soon as you get like your missions, you're good. If you're the Resistance, you're trying to play this game of like, I don't want to be too suspicious, but also like I want to be on the missions because you get chosen. So you're like, I want people's trust, but I also need to fail this to win. And so my brother Noel, my brother Evan were spies. So they're trying to fail the missions. And basically if you make it to like the last mission, or we made it to the last mission, and you know, as a Resistance, we were in a point where like if it failed, the Resistance lost. And so, you know, we're all arguing, trying to convince each other that we're on the Resistance, we're like on the good side. And we eventually make it, you know, like we set the team and we're like, okay, this is it, we're gonna see. And my brother Noel, who was a spy, was on the team. So in theory, he should be able to fail it because it's the last one. It doesn't matter if anyone knows. He should be able to fail it, and then the spies win the game. But he was just like being obnoxious, and so he succeeded the mission. So the Resistance won, even though Noel could have won the game for his team. And so my brother Evan was so mad because he could have won the game. Yeah, so that one is, pretty notorious. It's just so funny because as soon as basically everyone puts down their cards and it's the last mission, it doesn't really matter if you give it away. So everyone put down their cards and they're in the middle, and then Evan starts freaking out because he's like, we won the game. And then we flip over the cards and they all say succeed. And Evan's like, what?
Like, why did you do this?
Oh my God.
So, yeah, that one's pretty funny. And this like weird rule now that if you can win the game, you have to, which you think would just be like common sense.
You know, when you said that, I am also one to throw a wrench in games every once in a while. There's a game that's called something unicorns. It's like the exploding kittens.
Oh, yeah.
Unstable unicorns.
Unicorns, yeah.
And not that I was trying to actively sabotage or lose, but you get a starting unicorn, and they're all unicorns, except for the narwhal, which is a unicorn of the sea, so they allow it in the game. And so of the unicorns, I picked the baby narwhal because it's my favorite animal. And my entire gameplay was strategized around keeping that single card alive. So I probably could have won a bunch of times, but I would just do outrageous stuff to keep that alive. And then people started, instead of trying to win, try to take that card away from me. So we probably played for an extra hour just because nobody wanted to win until I lost my baby narwhal.
Yes, absolutely.
So I understand the sentiment.
Yeah, it gets to the point where it's like, it's really not about me winning, it's about this person losing sometimes. And yeah, we have a lot of arguments in them. Yeah, it gets intense sometimes, but it's a lot of fun.
There's got to be some kind of psychology, behavioral research paper behind this, because it sounds like not everyone is motivated to win. Some people are motivated by others losing.
Oh,
even if
absolutely.
it means my own downfall. Yeah.
Yes, I know. We get into situations like that, and we're like, this is so frustrating because like you're not playing the game the way it should be because you have an ulterior motive right now.
Yeah, 100%. Like I win if you lose. Doesn't matter if I actually win or not, but
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, we have a lot of that happen too.
I'm curious, Jenna, in your vast experience of board games, is there like me and Paul kind of talked about the different complexity of board games and like how most people have heard of Monopoly, and then you can kind of get into more and more complicated games from there. Have you ever played a board game that is just way too complex before?
So before my family was like really into the more complex games, I had a group in St. Louis that we would play board games with regularly. And they religiously played this zombie game. I don't remember the name of it, but they like played regularly as a group. And so I played one time with them, but you have to play it a lot to really understand the gameplay. I was so confused.
Yeah, they're like 4 or 5 strategies ahead of you.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. There's like so many moving parts. So that was one where I was like, I think it would be fun if I like understood it on the level that they did, but they just play it so much. But then there's another one, the Haunting of the, what is it, Pete? I know you like this one. Haunting of the House on the Hill.
Betrayal.
Yes.
Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Yes.
You don't like that one?
No, I actually do, but I think that's another
Okay.
one that it's so complicated, and every time you play it, it's a different game because like based off of like how the first half of the game goes, that determines what sheet you read for the second half of the game. So it's literally a completely different game. So I think that one can get really complicated too. I do really enjoy it though still. I know you really like that one.
I do love that one. I think that one's like an example of it's hard being a new player. There's like a little bit of a barrier to entry because you definitely have to spend, maybe an average game takes an hour, but you have to spend an hour just learning it. Like you won't understand until you actually play all the way through. So
Yes.
that's one that's like if you're new, and I hear that with the zombie game too. It's like if you're new and everyone else has played, like the first experience especially is just gonna be like learning for an hour rather than playing.
Maybe that's why it's good that you guys always play a new game when you go back to see your family. So nobody's like way too deep into any specific strategy or going to be too good at it.
Yes. No, that is true. It's like you can't learn the strategy as easily, which a lot of the games I think we play are a level below that. They're not quite that intense, mostly because there's a lot more players, I feel like, in the games we play. So they're just like a little bit less. And we don't always have the time to play like a 2 to 3 hour board game. So we usually feel like play games at a lower level than that. But I do think you're right in that it helps in that like you don't really, it takes you a while to figure out the strategy. We've been really into this new game, Deadwood, that I mentioned. And my husband, Mitchell, has not lost at it yet, which is really annoying. We've probably only played it 4 times or 5 maybe. But then it's like where it gets to the point of like, okay, are you actually good at it? Or are you just like, we've just, it's worked out that way because you learn the strategy, but not like so intensely, because we're not playing it like over and over and over.
I'll echo that. I know, just in case a select number of people are listening, I used to be the champion of Ticket to Ride in my family. Like I never lost Ticket to Ride, but I did suffer my first loss at the hands of my brother last Christmas. So
that's so
I used
sad.
to claim that like I was unbeaten at Ticket to Ride, but
yes,
keep trying. Mitchell will have a downfall eventually.
Exactly, yeah. There is one game we play that we've played for a long time. It's a lot of these games aren't necessarily like actually like a board, right? It's a whole variety when I say board games, but we play this game called Set that my dad learned about from a lady who used to work from him, and it's very like a math-minded matching game, and it goes really, really quickly, especially in our family. I mean, we're just screaming at each other because you have to say set when you see one of the cards laid out. And my sister, that's just like how her brain works in this like math way, because you have to match, like you're seeing all these shapes and you have to match like the color, the shape, how it's shaded. And you're trying to like, your brain has to go through all this process really quickly. And so that is one game I feel like where it is shocking if someone beats my sister Leah. I've done it, I think, a couple times in life, and I was like, I think I should just retire from playing set.
Take the win,
more,
retire
no
on the
more.
win.
Yes, exactly. So I think that is one where that's probably the only one where it's like without fail, Leah will win.
Do you think, in your opinion, is it possible for someone to just be good at board games? Like, not a specific one, but just in general, like to just be a good board game player?
That's a really good question. Because I feel like so many board games are really good balance of like there is some skill, but there's also just some luck that goes with it. So I do think you can be good at them in terms of the skill if you're like can pick up on, how to play a game well and what the strategy is pretty easily. But I do think it is hard on like a game that has a little bit of luck to hold on to like a champion status for a long time because eventually the luck's just not going to go your way. So I do think you can be good at them. And I think our family plays them enough that I feel like I can pick up a game pretty easily and figure out a strategy. You can usually like relate it back to a game that you've played, but there's always, I feel like most games have some level of, you have to roll dice or pick up cards, and that's just not something that you can be better at.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always, the component of luck. So eventually it's going to get you, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Ticket to Ride, that's all skill, Han. So you can
It's all skill. Yeah, forget that.
Ticket to Ride is such a funny game to me because I feel like it's almost like a step down from Catan. Like, I feel like I would recommend it to someone as if they're trying to get into board games. But it is one of the most frustrating games for me because you have very little control over you have no control over what other people are doing, and you don't know what they're doing, and then they can totally mess up everything for you. So that game stresses me out.
That's why I love it. It's like one move can just absolutely obliterate someone's strategy. So
yeah, it's so stressful because I'm like, okay, I have to go this path. And I'm like, but if someone goes, it's like stressful. You're just like waiting for your turn so you can finally place down your train and be like, okay, I'm good.
That always drives me crazy when like you're ready for your next turn. You're like, I know exactly what I'm going to do. And then the person right in front of you like completely screws you over.
Yes, absolutely.
Drives me nuts.
It's also funny with I feel like that's an important part of gameplay too, is literally where you sit. Because I feel like that can affect games a lot because the person in front of you can often really impact what you're able to do. So I feel like with our family sometimes too, if we play multiple rounds of a game and you're sitting behind someone that like keeps messing you up, it almost like can change the game. And it'd be like, I would be playing a totally different game if I was like sitting across the table.
Do you guys have assigned seats?
No, we don't have assigned seats, which is funny. Usually it just kind of like ends up how it is, but sometimes that can be really frustrating then because you're like, I really wish I was not behind this person.
Not behind Noel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Noel will mess you up. Also, my brother-in-law, Joe, I feel like is often a wild card too. Like, you don't know what he's going to do. So being behind one of them, it's like, I really hope that I don't get completely messed up with what I really want to do my next turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Jen, is there any kind of like lesser known board games? You did mention earlier that you wanted to say something that would surprise me. And I will say you've already done that. But is there any like specific lesser known board games you can give a shout out to? I'd be super curious to hear.
So it's hard for me to know what's like lesser known, but
That's fair.
Yeah, but we do play some that I'm like, I've never heard of it. But the facade ones, I will definitely give a shout out to because we like those. And I've already mentioned a couple of those. But one fun one that I don't know if it's fun or if it's like not fun, but it's just like a really fun concept. Our family just struggles to play it. It's called We're Doomed. And our family likes it because you have a timer for 15 minutes.
Wait, I know this game.
Oh, you do?
Is it the one with the rocket ship and you can either like take fuel or gold or something like that?
Yes, yep.
Oh, that's fun. That's a great
game. That's awesome. No, this is new to me though.
Okay, so you've played it before.
Yeah, one time. So I don't even know if those are the actual gameplays, but it was cool.
Yes. Yeah, it's a fun concept because it's kind of collaborative. Our family struggles with like the collaborative games because we're so competitive. But This one's like kind of collaborative in that you have to work together to build this rocket ship, but then only so many of you can go on the rocket ship. So it's like it has to be built, and then you're determined if you get on based off of like I think the amount of power you have or the amount of money you have. Like there's a couple of different options. But so you can be selfish on your turn and take stuff to like help your power, or you can, go for the betterment of the group and actually work towards building the rocket ship, but you only have 15 minutes. And then there's these weird cards that just like throw really random stuff into the game. And I don't think my family has ever literally even built the rocket ship.
Oh.
So, which is really funny because it's like we can't even like get together to actually build it, but it's like a weird game that my dad bought because I think it's different than a lot of the games we usually play, but it is a really like fun idea. And the fact that it's only 15 minutes, I feel like is fun because it takes our family a long time to play a lot of games.
Yeah, you're forced to actually like move through the game. Otherwise, if you guys are just arguing it, it never works out.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll get talking and then someone will be like, no, we need to keep going or the game's going to be over. And then another one that we've been playing a little bit more recently too, that's like a good one to pick up if you want something quicker. It's called Bahamas. Like your airplane is crashing and you want to get off the plane. And so you need a parachute. So there's like hidden cards. Some people have parachutes, some don't. And then, so you basically have to survive the plane crash with a parachute. And then whoever survives based off of that, you have to have the most amount of money. So it's kind of like a double thing. And it's fun because it's like a little bit shorter of a game, but it's still really fun. And you can, screw people over by taking their parachute. And we like the games like that a lot where you can be like, there's ways where you can like view other people's cards. And so, you might have a parachute and you're not telling anyone. And then as soon as someone steals that from you, you're like, that person has a parachute now. So you're trying to like rat out everyone. And yeah, that's a fun one to play when we're like, we don't want like something like too intense, but it's still like a really fun game.
Those two games you just described seem to have very similar themes. Just like cooperative, non-cooperative, escape, and kind of screw over your fellow players.
Yes, I do feel like we play a lot of games like that.
Yeah.
Which, which we enjoy. I feel like there are other games I've been introduced to through other friends that it's like it's a very different vibe because my dad always, picks ones that we'll like. But have you guys ever played Azul?
I've seen it, but I've never played it.
Okay.
In here.
That's a fun one that I was introduced to via friends, which my family doesn't own, but I own. So I'll bring it with sometimes when we go home. But it's a very different vibe. If someone wants something like not so intense where you're not like, yelling at each other the whole time, it's really fun. And it's a really pretty game. It's like based off of like the tiles, I think in Portugal. And it's kind of like a pattern making game. And there's some strategy and also just some luck. So that's another fun one that it's like a little bit less intense because we definitely do have a theme of the games that we like to play.
Yeah, that spaceship one sounds like Prisoner's Dilemma, the game, where it's like, if I help out and you help out, we're good. If I help out and you don't help out, I win. If we both don't help out, we're both done for.
Yep.
But like in your case, it sounds like that's what always happens and the spaceship never gets built. So.
Yes. It's like you have to have the right balance of being like selfish and also not selfish.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely starts with, well, at least the way that we played it when I played the one time was like everyone like, oh yeah, we'll help at the very beginning. Then one person realizes like, wait, this isn't going to pan out well for me. And then it just descends into chaos.
Yes. Yeah. Because you want to make sure you get on, but also you don't want to. The ship needs to be built to get on it.
That sounds actually so much fun. Sounds like fodder for arguments too, though.
Yeah.
It seems like most of these games are.
Yeah, I'm like, I'll have to bring back some games because we have so many games and we usually play when we're all together. So sometimes I'll like take games from home, but I'll have to bring back some of the good ones, Pete, and then we can play.
Okay, that'd be awesome. Yeah. And Paul, you can come too. Come out
thanks.
to Chicago again.
I appreciate it. I'll make a board game trip.
Yeah, come join us. Or we could go to one of those board game places that they would probably have some of the ones that I've like played too. Or that we have at home. Fun. Yeah, I feel like that's a good way to get into board games too, is because we went to one here in Chicago where we're like, let's play a new game. And we played one at like the National Parks game, which is a beautiful game. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that one. They also have a game Trails, like the same company, but we didn't have to learn it because the person who was helping us just like taught us the game, and then you could just play, which I feel like is kind of a good way to do it too.
Yeah, that's perfect. Actually.
That's exactly why it's just like having your brother read all the rules.
Yes, exactly.
Takes all the hard part out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the worst part about a new game is learning it.
I believe that. And yeah, it was funny. All the games that you're describing, right? These like half cooperative, half like screw each other over. I really like cooperative games. So I know Hans and I, we've played Pandemic a bunch.
Yes.
I really like that style of game because I get really stressed out when people are fighting each other.
Yeah.
So I need these like cooperative games. So I'm glad that there's just like there's the breadth of the types of games that you can play. I mean, even just in the ones that you were talking about is like just so wide that you can find something that you like.
Yes, absolutely. I know the cooperative ones is just like a different style, I feel like, than we usually do, but I do love Pandemic. It is very fun. And then we have another one too. It's called Mysterium. That's a cooperative game that one person is like the ghost, and they're basically giving you visions with these cards that are like all these different scenes, and you give a vision and the person trying to figure out what the ghost is trying to tell you because the ghost can't talk. So that's another really fun collaborative one that my family will play.
That sounds like so much fun. Jenna, obviously this podcast is about finding a hobby, picking up a new passion every week. So what's your like elevator pitch for why someone should pick up board games as a hobby?
I think it is a great way to like hang out with people and just like a good, I don't know, I feel like it's a good time. I mean, we obviously, like, my family plays it a lot together, which I love. And it's, we just know that when I'm in town and my other siblings are in town, we're going to all like sit down and like play a handful of games together because it's just like, designated time together. I also think it's just, you can find your niche and what you like. And there's literally so much out there. I think it's a really fun way to like entertain yourself.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. I think board games should not be that hard of a sell as a hobby. Like, it's so much fun. It's a very active thing to do together in a group, instead of, I don't know, some, watch a TV series. Not that that's bad or anything, but it's more active when I would say watching a TV series might be more passive. So it kind of just is a fun thing to bring groups together. Yes. So I also absolutely love board games. Highly recommend if someone is interested to just start playing more board games.
Yes. Yeah. Like, it's a fun way to just spend time with people, I think.
100%. Jenna, could you give any plugs, either personal, any YouTube videos, resources?
Yeah. I mean, definitely to my parents' company. Yeah. HG Gameworks is, I think, a great place. I keep telling my parents, I'm like, you need a bigger presence on social media.
Hans is really good at running a TikTok account, so you could throw him their way.
I didn't know this about you, Pete.
he had a TikTok channel before this podcast too. You should go look him up.
Oh, okay.
That was the COVID thing. I'm so bored that I just make some dumb videos.
Oh my gosh, okay, I'm excited to watch them. But because the way I, play the games is my dad picks them out and my brother teaches me. So I don't, like, I knew you were going to ask about, things to plug. And I was like, I don't really have great resources. So I texted my dad because he'll watch also like YouTubers to kind of get ideas for games sometimes too of like what our family would enjoy. And so he said the place he usually goes is gameboardgeek.com for like new games and link to like video reviews that they'll have on there. So that's like what he goes to often because I was like, I don't have a lot to recommend because I just show up and play what's in front of me. That's
the most expert of expert opinions I think we've ever got on this podcast. So shout out to boardgamegeek.com.
Yeah.
Great. Jenna, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Of course. Yeah, this is so fun.
So much fun. Yeah. Good luck at your next board game night. I hope you don't get hit by the Knoll rule.
Oh my God.
I will always win the game if I can. That's not a problem for me.
No problem there. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the This Week I'm Into podcast, and huge thank you to Jenna Preslicka for sharing her passion on board games. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for the next episode, please reach out at thisweekiminto@gmail.com. And please give us a follow on Instagram at thisweekiminto. Please rate us 5 stars and share this episode with a friend. We are doing our best to grow the podcast, and your help really does go a long way. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.
All right, Hans, it comes down to this roll. If I get a 6, I win the game.
Oh, you can't win again, Paul. You already beat me in chess twice. Now, we don't even know what we are doing. How are you even winning? There's no way.
Yes, I win again.
No, you always win. How do you do it? There's just something you are not telling me.
Easy, Hans. It's just a game.
Just a game? Just a game? It's every single freaking time. I can't take it anymore. Paul, tell me what it is.
All right, Hans. You want to know my secret?
Yes, Paul. Please.
All right. Have you ever heard of performance-enhancing drugs before? Well, it's not quite that. I've been inhaling this week's sponsor, Gamer Fuel, like it was the Cinnamon Challenge.
Paul, what the hell are you even talking about?
Hans, Gamer Fuel. Only the best drink since Kool-Aid. It'll give you the same energy to burst through walls, but also help conceal the fact that I have 4 aces up my sleeves.
What did you just say?
Hans, are you ready to lose some friends or alienate a third wheel during a couple's night? Then snort this PewDiePie flavored powder.
Paul, you're losing it, man. What the hell are you even talking about?
I'm talking about G Fuel!
Paul? Are you okay? Welcome to this week's sponsor, Naloxone. Be prepared, get Naloxone, save a life. In this day and age, saving a life can be this easy in an opioid emergency. Here, Paul, let me give you a spray.
Whoa, what happened? Whatever. Hans, we playing again same time next week?
Sure, bud. Just cut out the PEDs, alright?